this, what I would really like for is, I think, of course, questions are welcome anytime. Feel free to, pause me in between. But also, I think the more interactive, the better. It's very nice to listen to opinions or ideas, thoughts, if you agree, disagree with something, or if you have a different idea altogether. Okay, so please, as much as you can. Yeah, I think this is going to be fun to see what all we come up with. Why don't you all tell me or share with us some metaphors for sex? So, for example, you can say sex is like, a rainbow on a sunny day, or it's ice cream, or like a something flavor on an ice cream cone, anything like that. Can we share a couple of suggestions? People, either you unmute or on the chat, please. Okay. Babu says it is bliss. Yes. Try and come up with something creative. So try and associate it with either like an object or a situation or anything. Happy times. Yes. That's it. Only two suggestions. Stress relief. Yes. But why don't you try and come up with something fun, a metaphor? As I said, it's like an ice cream cone, it's like a rainbow, it's just anything like that. Only 3 responses till now. Gender in government forms. Okay. Yes. Popcorn while watching movie. Yes. Okay. I think that's maybe code for sexual intercourse, I guess. Okay. Yes. Any more? Anybody would like to unmute and say Netflix and chill? Yes, I think that's a very, very commonly used phrase. Yes. Any other ideas? No, is that it? Okay, sex is like sharing the most intimate feeling. It definitely is. It's a very, very personal, private, intimate thing. Yes. Okay, anything else? No more. There's so many people on call. Why don't we have more? Aisha, I think I need you to get them a little bit. Vulnerable, yes, in a certain way. Okay, that's it. All right. Okay, so I think what I guess I'd like to start with is we often again with the growing time and how and at the rate at which things have been evolving, there has been a lot of information on anything and everything around sexual wellness or sexual health, right? So in the internet, of course, you have everything there. You have articles, you have videos, you have talks, you have everything and anything that's there. So what I'm showing here, displaying here, is just a couple of articles, a few articles rather, that we tend to bump into very often. So anything around marriage, or how a relationship should be, or how your zodiac sign maybe determines how your sex life should be, or signs of this, signs of that, right? Or again around maybe Valentine's Day, sexual positions for a certain type of couple or a type of people, and things like this also, right? Things you shouldn't expect from your husband. I mean, there's just like a lot of different articles that come in, and I'm sure as much as the internet is definitely a blessing, I think there are times that a lot of extra unrequired information is available as well. And when there's a lot of information around, you don't really know what to pick from. You don't know what to believe. You don't know what to go around with, right? So this was a research done by a group of, a couple of psychiatrists and therapists. So this basically shows if you can see here at the bottom right, it shows the most searched words, right? So you see ejaculation, penis, erection, masturbation, small. So this, I think there've been a lot of searches revolving around this. People tend to be very curious about, what the ejaculation time is, what's a good time, a bad time, or, the penis size, how an erection should be, the shape of it, or, things around masturbation, right? So a lot of questions, a lot of curiosity, a lot of thoughts You listen to things, you read things, and I think that often causes a lot of confusion. So we get to the internet to try and figure out, right? So the reason that we're doing this talk now during this time is because, I'm sure maybe you rewind maybe a decade or 2-3 decades ago, maybe not a decade, but yeah, about 2-3 decades ago, things were very different. Things were a lot more, just sort of, it was at a particular pace. Things were just believed. You didn't really have maybe too many people questioning things. It was just like, okay, this is said, so this is what we're believing, or this is what we're told, and this is what we have to do. And you tend to focus on, okay, how are things going to work out long term? And that's what you focus on, maybe majorly, right? But now we've observed a lot more. Things are very dynamic and they're very unpredictable as well, right? So things are just constantly changing. Even if you look at gadgets, for example, you have this phone that comes up today, which is great and super fast with charging or whatever, and maybe a year, 2 years, or whatever down the line, you have another phone coming up with better whatever features, right? So there's a lot of change, a lot of fast moving ideas and everything. So it's important for us to sort of keep pace with, right? So a couple of things for us to try and just like a small quiz. Okay. So what do we think is the answer to the first question? To increase the size of small penises, which would be the best suitable option? Guys, do you like to put, okay, someone says none. Another one says none. Okay. Do we have different, okay, someone says the second one. Okay. The third one, second. Okay, or if you think there could be, a cause that I've not mentioned here. Okay, so I think most people seem to be thinking between the second and the third option. Okay, now we have the first option. Okay, someone saying that it's not possible. Right, okay, do we have anything that I've not mentioned here? No? Okay, so fine, I'll come back to this. What about the second question? Which of the effects can masturbation have on a man's health? This should be very interesting to know. Reducing sperm quality, would it affect the mood, stamina, or could it weaken the penile muscles? What are our thoughts? Nothing? Okay, all of the above. Okay. No, most people are going with none. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, none, covering all of them. Interesting. Okay. Okay, we'll get back to this as well. What about the third one? Which of the effects can masturbation have on a woman? Oh, sorry. Yes. You're not able to see the third option? Okay, it basically, the third option is it's becoming an unhealthy habit. What do you think? None, again? Okay, 1, reduces pleasure from sexual intercourse. Okay. Can increase size of the vaginal opening. Possibility, I think. That's it. Okay, all right. So, to all these 3 questions, none of the options are true, right? So the first one, there is nothing that can increase the size of a penis, whether it's small, it's big, it's average, whatever that it is, there is no option at all. There are a few surgical procedures somewhere, but that's definitely not advised and they don't really make a significant difference, right? But has no effect on your, it can have no effect on your sexual performance. You can still have a good sex life. Focusing more on foreplay skills, things like that can be very helpful, right? I think the best thing is to accept whatever the penis size, embrace it, and then focus more on things that you do have control over, right? Second one, again, masturbation in itself is absolutely harmless. So the people who can masturbate maybe once a month and be okay with it. Some people masturbate once in 3 days. So there's no hard and fast rule on how much is too much or how much is too less. But I think in this sense, anything done in excess, like you're doing it maybe 4 or 5 times a day or 3, 4 times every day, and you feel that it's not, you're not feeling too okay about it, that's when maybe we can address and figure out what's causing you to masturbate so much and how we can deal with that. But otherwise, it can have absolutely no negative effect on anything. It cannot really even affect. Masturbation in itself cannot affect sexual intercourse, right? The third one, again, same thing for a man and a woman. You masturbate for pleasure. You masturbate to release sexual tension. You masturbate when you're aroused or if you don't have your partner close to you. Yes? Okay. So none of this is true. Everything's fine. Anything's okay. Anything done in excess or too aggressively, I'm sure we'll know something's a little off then and we'd want to work around that. Right? So, okay. I think before this, how many of us would say that we are unaware of our genital anatomy? Okay, someone has said that, when I know I need masturbation, but after doing it, you feel bad. I have a reason to that. We'll maybe address it a little towards the end of the session, if that's okay. Maybe just hold on to that, please. Yeah, so anybody who thinks that you're not very familiar with the your genital anatomy? Anybody who thinks so? Do you? Everybody? Okay, so I'll just very briefly take you through it, right? Now, for a female, the whole area around this vagina. So when we say vagina, we tend to think it's the whole female genital area, right? But the genital area for a female is actually called the vulva. Okay, it's only that opening where the penis penetrates or where you menstruate from, that's called the vagina. So you have the vaginal opening, you have a very small opening above that, which is the urethral opening, which is where you urinate from, right? And then above that, you have the clitoris. Do we know what the clitoris does? Females or males, do you know what the clitoris does? Anybody? Anybody? No? Pleasure nerves, okay. Any other ideas? Do we know what the clitoris does? No, nobody has an idea? Well, come on. Okay. So the clitoris is, yes. So when it's stimulated, yeah, someone's saying sensations, right? So when it is stimulated, most women achieve their sexual orgasm through clitoral stimulation, right? A very, very small percentage of them achieve an orgasm only through vaginal penetration or vaginal sex, right? So a lot of people choose to, while they're having penetrative or vaginal sex, they also like to have the clitoris stimulated. So it's pleasure both ways. Okay, so this is how it is. For the male, the penis is, I think, if I should say, fairly simpler to understand. You have the penis head, which is where most of the sensation is felt, most of the sensitivity. Okay, and then you have the shaft, which is the area from the end of the penis head until where it attaches, I should say, to the body. So I think fairly simpler, and then you have the testes, of course, the scrotum. Okay, we fairly understood with that. Okay, so yeah, breaking in between, all physical contact between couples must lead to sex. What are our thoughts? Okay, some saying no. No? All physical contact shouldn't lead to sex? With couples at least? Okay. Any other thoughts, opinions? Someone loves cuddling. Yeah, cuddling is, I'm sure, a very nice, cuddles are fine. Yeah, I think it just sort of helps with the bonding and you feel very comfortable and nice, right? Okay, so sometimes it's unpredictable. Yes. So all physical contact between couples does not necessarily have to lead to intercourse. Okay. Now, the number of times you choose to have sexual intercourse, the number of times you choose to masturbate is a very subjective thing. That means it depends person to person. It depends couple to couple. The couples who can have sexual intercourse once in 3 months and they're fine with it. So if they're fine with it, then it is fine. The couples who like to have sexual intercourse once and again, 2 days or 3 days or a week. So as long as they're fine, again, it's fine, right? So any kind of sexual activity that is done should be done only because both of you or both partners want to do it, and it should be a mutual thing. Nothing ever pressured or forced, right? And okay, so the first bottom left, in a good relationship, there should be no arguments. There should be no arguments. Anybody would like to unmute and share an opinion? That'd be so nice. Anybody? No?
Arguments are good.
Yes.
Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, arguments are good. They basically get, they should not become like quarrel. But yeah, even quarrels are good at times. It leads to some, good base of relationship and formation. So yeah.
Yes. First of all, thank you for even sharing an opinion. That was really nice. But no, I think that's absolutely right. Arguments should be there. And of course, I think this goes back to my point of saying, anything done in excess is not okay, right? So as long as it's not getting too aggressive or violent or, abusive, it's okay. But very important to talk about disagreements, right? If you don't like something, why do you not like it? Or if you like something, why do you like it? I don't think it's good for people to just never be able to express different opinions. So arguments are okay, but of course, again, everything done within a boundary is fine. It's very subjective. Yes. Okay, the next thing, sex is a very important part of the relationship. Interesting. What do we think? Is sex a very important part of the relationship? Okay, anybody would like to unmute and speak? It was really nice listening to Ketan. Anybody would like to unmute and speak? No? Okay, some messages on the chat that it is a very important part of it. Okay, so a lot of y'all agree that it's a very important part. Okay. Do we have a different opinion from anyone?
Just clarifying the question here. Like, yes. Are we talking about like the relationships that should end up in kind of a physical relationship, or like we're talking in terms of just like having the relationship that can be tagged as only friends also?
No, I think we're talking only about a romantic relationship.
In that case, it's good to have kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. Yes, it's definitely good. Okay. Do we have another opinion? Anybody? No? Nothing. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. What is FWB? Not very familiar with that, but okay. Right. So, yeah, sex. So, I think it's often, the sexual relationship and, otherwise just the emotional relationship between a couple, they're both interdependent, right? So often a good sexual relationship helps in bettering the bond you have with your partner, right? And sometimes the better the bond you have with your partner, the sexual relationships gets better. So it sort of works both ways, but it definitely doesn't mean that, a couple that doesn't have sexual intercourse or has it super rare is not a happy couple, right? Again, I think goes back to a point of it being very, very subjective. So coming to this, right? Good relationship, good sexual relationship, both go hand in hand, right? With Mars, Venus, both, the idea is just we say men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Do we know what kind of personality the planets have or where this came up from? No. But right, the idea is, both, as I said, they have an effect on one another. It's very rare, maybe where, a couple, is in a very, very unpleasant, bad relationship, but the sexual relationship's great, or vice versa. It's very rare, but it often is dependent one on the other. Okay. So we have different kinds of intimacy, right? The emotional, the social, intellectual, sexual, and recreational. Now, your emotional intimacy is when you're emotionally comfortable with your partner, right? You share love, you share affection, you feel very close and comfortable, and you just feel nice overall, right? Social is when you have common friends, you have a similar social network. Maybe you hang out with each other's friends, you have mutual friends, and you have something that's in common. the social context. Intellectual type of intimacy is where you're sharing ideas, beliefs, thoughts, opinions, theories, anything and everything. And even if you're not on the same page, you're sharing it nonetheless. That's what's important, right? You're comfortable talking about it. Sexual intimacy, again, sharing sexual activities, being on the same page, more or less, even if not exactly. But what I'd like to add here is, there are times where one partner likes or doesn't like something, and the other partner is on a different page. So I think in a situation like that, it's important to try and come to like a midpoint, make small compromises wherever, both ways, and say, this is what both of us like together. So maybe this is what you focus on more. And, maybe one person indulges the other and the other way around once in a while. Right. And yeah, the recreational intimacy is shared hobbies and interests. You go trekking together, watch stand-up comedy shows together, movies, things like that. But there are different types of intimacy. And I think we all have, a certain way we function under each of these. Right. So yes, breaking into a question in between again. Erection on demand. I don't know if the males are going to be in a better place to answer this. It's an on-off button. Is it or is it not? It's not. Never. No way. Okay. Mornings are always on. Yeah, I think it is like that for a lot of males. Someone is saying they wish. Okay. Any other opinions? Right? So it's not. Okay, so maybe I'll just throw in a couple of interesting facts, if not already known. Now, for an erection to even happen, or, sexual functioning in general for a male or a female, right? There are a lot of processes that are involved biologically, right? Things like your psychological state, your hormonal levels, chemicals in your body, blood flow, so many things that are involved, right? So out of all of these factors, even if one or two factors are off, that can, sort of interfere with the whole erection or ejaculation or just even sexual arousal in general for a male or female. Females, of course, don't have an erection or ejaculation, but for them, it's the lubrication. And that's what happens when they're sexually aroused, right? So it's okay for males to have days where you maybe don't have a very, very great erection. I don't think everybody can every time have that perfect sexual performance or sexual experience, right? So if it's some days, it's okay. If you feel it's happening a little too often, that's when you can consult and have it addressed, right? So like I was saying, three main things: the blood flow, your nerve supply, and a balance of sex hormones. This is what is the three primary things that drive how an erection is for a male, right? And very, very often, things like stress, anxiety, preoccupation with thoughts, or not having a very good relationship, or, you've had an argument recently, a lot of these things can interfere very, very directly with the erection. Okay, something to keep in mind. Okay, so anybody can take a guess as to what this DEOR stands for? How does the, when we're sexually excited or aroused, how does it work? What are the stages our body goes through? Stress has the opposite effect, makes you want to do more. Okay, well, if that works for you, then great. Yes, people, any idea on what DEOR could stand for? Any? No? No idea? Let me, okay, no, don't Google it, that's fine. D is for desire, yes. E is not for emotion. Okay, let's go through it, right? So the first thing that starts off with is the desire, right? When you're aroused, the arousal, the more the desire, the more the arousal, of course, right? So everything starts with that desire, the interest, the want or the urge to even have some sort of a sexual activity or, be sexually intimate with someone, right? Then what follows is the excitement. So this is where, male, so for a female, she starts to, the nipples start to get a little hard, the blood, obviously, the heart's beating fast, blood's rushing over. For the males, it's the erection, again, heart beating fast. You could feel a little sweaty. So a lot of these things tends to happen when you're sexually aroused or sexually excited, right? This, again, more excitement keeps increasing, the arousal keeps increasing, then you finally hit the orgasm. For females, they don't ejaculate, but it's basically marked by two things. One is they just feel this heightened, like a peak sense of pleasure, and the body goes through some sort of a rhythmic contraction of muscles, mainly around the pelvic area, right? So that's how an orgasm is for them. For the men, of course, it's basically the ejaculation, right? And after this, after you hit the peak, you're basically down to resting, which is when your heart starts to, you're not having an increased heartbeat, settles down, you don't feel as flushed around your body, you don't feel as warm, everything sort of comes to rest. And I don't know if this is important to mention, but I think a lot of times, or at least for quite a few people, after sexual intercourse or after ejaculation, a lot of males tend to feel sleepy or drowsy, or they want to rest, right? But for females, I think they just sort of feel refreshed. They'd like to maybe cuddle, they want to maybe spend time talking or just whatever, but spending some time, right? Now, this is often because for males, when they ejaculate, there's some sort of a neurologic substance that's released in the brain, very basically, and that's what causes them to feel drowsy, right? So if this is causing some sort of a conflict or a disagreement, it's important to talk to your partner and, as I said, see as best as you can do for each other. Okay, so what is OCIC here? People, do we know what OCIC is over here? No? Nothing in the chat? Okay, so IC is intercourse and OC is outercourse, right? This is what we're referring to. So intercourse is where you actually have penetrative sex, right? Outercourse is which involves anything to do in and around foreplay. So kissing, holding hands, cuddling, the other two is just for you to fill in, because for every couple it's different, right? Basically, everything and anything you do behind closed doors, and anything that's before or doesn't involve penetration or penetrative sex, all of that comes under outercourse. Okay, very important that you spend as much time as you can on foreplay and not rush into intercourse, right? Everybody has a lot of or multiple erogenous areas, and I think it's very important, good and helpful to spend a lot of time exploring these areas, spending more time on, male does it for a female does it for a male, but you focus on this, and then, after all of that, you move on to penetrative sex, right? So penetrative sex, so we tend to very casually use the term sex, but sex actually revolves around anything and everything to do with physical intimacy, right? So penetrative sex is the actual penetration. So if you say sex in its strictest sense, it doesn't mean you've penetrated. Okay, so let's try and use the right choice of words around. Okay, do opposite characteristics attract each other? Does it? Is it true that opposites actually do attract each other? Okay, some says yes, no, not necessarily. Maybe yes, no. Again, I think we have not necessarily, right? So I think we have mixed responses. Not always, yeah. So I think it works either way, right? I mean, at the end of the day, what works is you being attracted to a person's personality, their physical appearance, and just maybe how you're able to sort of emotionally connect with them, right? So this was this was a study conducted, of this researcher had sort of done the study over a matrimonial site, and this is what she found out. So most Indian men in the 21st century, at least, typically look at women who are fair, who are, physically appealing. They have certain, so-called Indian values. They're able to spend a lot of, able to take care of the house, things like that, having a lot of talents. someone just very pleasant and nice to be around, right? And Indian women typically would want a man with a good job, a good education, good reputation behind the family, physical appearance, of course. And then, I think the more okay or liberal, if I should say, they are with women for them to pursue their work or studies, they find that more appealing, right? And I think one of the things that we can draw from this is the fact that as much as that might be very typical things most people follow, or certain typical things that work for most people, it's important that we stick to things we find appealing. Just because this person looks at this, or this is how most people look at certain things, doesn't mean we have to follow the same thing, right? It's important that you look at what you find attractive and what you're comfortable with. Okay, so genitals in men and women and female breasts are the only sex organs. What do we think? I mean, these are the reproductive organs, the vagina and the penis, but what do we think of? These are not the only sex organs? Okay. Yes? No. Okay, so I think most people are saying no, right? So I think there are different things. These are the reproductive organs, of course, but as I was saying, there are a lot of other areas which can be very sexually stimulating. Can be, somebody said 77 erogenous zones. There are a lot of them. Yes, why don't you throw in what are some of the zones that we think could be sexually stimulating for a male or a female? We know things like the breast, of course. So apart from what we already know, ears, lips, the neck, back, yes, yes. The hair, yes. Yes, the thighs, legs, eyes, yes. The wrists, for a lot of people is the wrist, the belly button, correct. Toes, feet, hip. Yes, I think we're definitely on the right path. So see, we've already named a lot of them, right? So which is, I think, me going back to the point of saying, have as much time as you can spending on foreplay and just exploring different erogenous areas on your partner, right? So speaking of which, there are times where, like I was saying, there are times where, mentally we're someplace else, but physically something else is happening, either for a male, maybe he's unable to have an erection, maybe because he's been stressed for a long time, or he's just preoccupied with something else. And when you don't have an erection, when you're going to have sexual intercourse, what happens? You have a lot of guilt, or you feel embarrassed, you feel ashamed, horrified, a lot of anxiety, because you're like, what's going on? You want to have sexual intercourse, but then you're just unable to have the erection that you need, right? So what tends to happen is that initial so-called failure that you have leads to a lot of doubt and worry, right? Because your mind tends to get into a loop of, is something wrong with me? Will I be able to ever have sexual intercourse? What does this mean? What can I do? What's happening, right? Once you get into that anxiety loop, that can lead to something that we call spectatoring, which means you are constantly observing your penis, for example, when you're attempting intercourse or doing anything else which is physically intimate. So you're observing your penis, trying to see if it's having erection or not, instead of focusing more on the pleasure bit, right? So now when you're focusing on that, you obviously have a lot of anxiety. Is it happening? Is it not happening? So when this continues, it causes a mind-body disconnect, because mentally you're someplace else. As I said, you're anxious, stressed, but then you want an erection to happen, or mentally you're aroused, but you're not having an erection, right? Either way. So when this mind-body disconnect is there, it causes another failure, because when you're anxious, I think nobody can perform anything anyway, right? You need to sort of be fairly calm and, okay to focus on something, right? So again, when you're unable to perform because of that anxiety and stress, you start to avoid it. So say it's happened once, twice, thrice, and I'm just not going to do it because there is an issue and I don't think I'll be able to get over it, right? So this again goes back to the loop of stress, worry, anxiety. So this is called the performance anxiety cycle. Every time you try You see it's not working out, that makes you believe something's wrong, and because something's wrong, you avoid it. And when you avoid it, you don't do it. And that only sort of falsely reinforces the belief that something's wrong and you'll never be able to get over it. I'm sorry, was someone saying something? No? Okay. So again, if you feel that this is something that's happening too much to an extent where it's making, any kind of sexual activity very difficult, please consult with someone. This is something that's, something that can definitely be addressed. Right? So yeah, if you show affection to men, they want sex. Is this true, false? Is this true or false? Okay, no. We have a lot of very strong no's. It is true. Someone says it's true. Okay, any other opinions? Depends on the state of mind of the guy. Okay, interesting. Somewhat true. Yeah, I think fair enough, right? I think there are two things here. One is, maybe, we tend to maybe hear of a certain cases and then assume it's like that every time with everybody. But then, yeah, maybe there are times, a partner might, as I say, give you certain signals and, it's misunderstood or misinterpreted. But the point is, it's definitely not true all the time, right? It's I think based on the kind of relationship you share with the person and, what each person's looking at. But it's not a necessity that if you're nice or you show affection that they immediately want to jump into sexual intercourse, right? And okay, presence of hymen is a sure sign of virginity. What do we think? Presence of hymen is a sure sign of virginity? No? No? Okay. Big no. Okay. So do we know how the hymen can break otherwise? Any thoughts, anyone? Yes, exercise, cycling, sports, exactly, right? So things like, if you're cycling, you're swimming, any sort of, very, a lot of heavy exercise or anything can definitely cause for the hymen to break, right? Or if a woman masturbates, that obviously can cause it to break as well. So I think the concept of virginity in this sense wouldn't really exist as much. Okay. Okay, the next one. Porn has no effect on how people feel about themselves. Very curious to know what people have here. What do we think? Does porn have an effect on how people might feel about themselves, either just generally or sexually? What do we think? Not at all. False. Yes, yes, yes. Some people are saying not always. Okay, I think mixed responses again. Okay, a lot of yeses as well. So yes, I mean, there are definitely times where porn can have a negative effect on people because, yeah, someone said it's a 14 billion-dollar industry, right? So now what happens in porn is, maybe a 3-minute video that you see has probably taken 8 hours to film, right? There are different camera angles. The actors are told to do things a certain way. Everything is scripted and acted basically, right? Some of them are like on medication or whatever. I mean, it's not very natural. It's not how things work in reality. So watching porn in itself is not, harmless in the sense, as long as you're aware that, okay, this is something I'm seeing only for, maybe visual stimulation and, not go beyond that, it's okay. But it's very important to be aware of that. If not, it can affect how you even just look at yourself physically, right? So the AAA engine effect, as we call it, accessibility, affordability, and anonymity. These three things has helped skyrocket, us being able to view anything, all kinds of sexual content on the internet, right? Which is why the internet has so much to offer, and it's very important for us to know where to restrict it, how much is okay and how much of it is not okay, right? To be very, very aware that just because something's available and easy to access doesn't mean we have to engage with or use it. Okay. Yeah, so sexting. Is it good? It spices up romance. It helps with intimacy. It can help just bond with your partner. What do we think? Okay. Yes. Okay. So we have a lot of them who say it helps. Sexting spices things up. Depends on your partner. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So I think most people have said yes. Now I think this is going to be a little bit of a, maybe something we can discuss or try and understand. And again, I think sexting in itself, is again, maybe it has its things of, spicing things up and, being in touch with your partner when they're not around. But if you look at it generally or with how it has been most times, it's not very advisable, right? And that's because once you send a picture to someone online, that's it. It's as good as it just being everywhere, because you're never sure, either someone else sees it by mistake or, the phone goes somewhere else, or anything can happen, right? And you can just, once it's out of your control, it's out of your control, right? So there are a lot of things that can happen. People might pressure someone else into saying, if you love me, you should do this, or if you trust me, you should do this, or, say, oh, because you don't trust me, you're not doing it, or I'm very disappointed, or, I'm not going to be okay if you don't trust me with this. So there can be a lot of pressure, but it's very important to explain and communicate with your partner why you're not okay doing a certain thing and sort of hold strong to that. Okay. I mentioned earlier today that any kind of sexual activity, intimacy, anything, that's private or personal should not be done forced or pressured. Everything and anything that's done should be done mutually and in a safe environment. Right. So I think in this sense, it's not a very advisable thing to do. Okay. So yeah, sex and relationship education in India, what do we think? What do we think of it? It's important, needed, yeah, absolutely necessary, right? So again, I think because of all that we've spoken about, a lot of excess, too much of information, too many things we're listening to, we often don't know where to listen to what, where to do what, how much to take. So very important, we communicate and talk about the right things and to the right people. Be very responsible with the information you have. Okay. So yes, I think that's.
Yeah, we'll take up the questions then, Kanusha.
Okay. Do I stop sharing screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I have just ruled out a NPS poll. In case you find the session insightful, please feel free to drop your response as well. So we had a few questions. So Kanusha, in case you got any personal question also, please feel free to take them up.
Okay.
I actually had one. Let me just, okay. Is it normal to not go multiple times a night, but just have one long session?
I'm sorry, is it multiple okay too?
It's not to go multiple times a night, but just one long session.
Of sexual intercourse?
Yes.
Yes, of course, it's perfectly fine. As I said, you can do it once in 2-3 months, it's fine. You can do it for 1 or 2 hours. That one time you do it in 2-3 months, it's fine. Or you can do it for an hour, 3 times a week. I think, again, you would know when something's getting to a very uncomfortable point, right? But as long as you're doing things mutually and you're comfortable with it, definitely no.
I lost you, Kanusha.
Yeah.
You there?
I'm here, yes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
We have some questions here. Is there a credible report on effects of masturbation to the health of men?
No, there's no effect. As I said, unless you feel it's, and even if you do it excessively or you feel you're addicted to it or, you're compulsively doing it, I mean, it cannot cause like a health issue. It might just affect your, ability to function otherwise overall, just attend to work, to your routine, your health in general. So it can definitely affect overall functioning, but nothing to the extent of causing a physical issue in that sense.
sperm count decreases, but quality increases is a vague statement I came across. I think it's a statement. Do you have any opinions on this?
If you mean sperm count decreases, but quality, okay. No, so again, if you're talking about masturbation, no, you can never lose or the sperm count will never reduce, right? I mean, the body is just producing it, all the time. So you don't ever have to think of it, the quality being compromised on or the quantity. There's nothing of that sort.
Okay. How should we differentiate between biological and emotional need in perspective of sex?
Biological and emotional?
Emotional need in perspective, like in terms of sex, how do we differentiate between the physical need and the mental need here?
So again, I think you see, the kind of when you want to have an emotional bond with someone, right? That's probably when you want to maybe just be able to talk to them, spend time, go out, eat together, just sit together, right? But the need for sexual intimacy is when you actually want to have some sort of physical proximity, right? You want to hug, you want to kiss. There's some sort of amount of physical touch that you want. An emotional bond might not necessarily mean that. You can have someone in a different state or country and still feel good talking to them. So I think in this sense, it's they work together, but not, they're not the same.
Selvina is asking, does sperm contain nutrients? Do we lose those nutrients while we masturbate?
Yeah, I mean, well, it certainly contains, many things, right? But definitely, the context of losing those nutrients, no. It's sperm, as I said, masturbation causes no health issue. You can masturbate once in how many ever days. In itself, it can do no harm. Quality, quantity, nutrients, nothing. You don't lose out on anything.
Following up with the same question that we had earlier, when I know I need masturbation, and why do I feel bad after doing it?
Right. Yes. So I don't know if the person can answer it, but that often tends to happen because of things we've been told or things we hear, right? So people often say that, if you masturbate, it's bad, or you're losing out on this, or it makes you weak, or it's not a good thing to do, it's sinful. Or, I mean, we have a lot of different things that we come across, right? So that's probably why, I mean, I would need more information on this, but these are primarily, very common causes of why people tend to feel guilty or not good after masturbating. But as I said, masturbation in itself is not harmful at all. So doesn't do any bad.
Yeah. Can I have sex without protection and not get pregnant any time of my cycle?
I mean, you're always, even if, you see that the guy pulls out, in quotes, in time. So there's something called the pre-cum, right? Which males tend to have. And it's sort of like the male version of lubrication for them, right? But the pre-cum can have the potential to impregnate someone. Right? So it's definitely not, I mean, if you don't want to get pregnant and to avoid any possible infections, condoms always advisable. Never without that.
Is there any cycle in the in the women's menstrual cycle that is safe to have unprotected one?
I mean, of course they say during the menstrual cycle you can't get pregnant, but there are those very, maybe odd, rare possible chances where you can still get pregnant. But as I said, it's always just best to stick onto a condom, because you can just never really predict things in this sense. So just stick onto a condom.
Okay. I don't know the question. Do we have any question? Is it fine to have sexual intercourse more than 2 times in a day?
Of course. Go. I mean, if you're enjoying it and you're like it with your partner, go ahead, enjoy it as much as you want to.
Is it possible to have multiple orgasms in a single session for males?
For males, it might be not maybe as easy for a woman, because when you have an orgasm, generally you tend to ejaculate. A male tends to ejaculate, right? And it generally requires some amount of time for the body to sort of get back to that place. But for some people are able to take a break of 15 minutes or half an hour, an hour, and get back at it. So in that way, you certainly can, maybe multiple times a day, but maybe not in that particular time, like a woman could probably have.
All right. So, guys, I've attached a link in the chat where you can go for a free consultation with the doctors. So, this was given by Alo, and Alo has a great set of doctors with them. And since we are all associated with NOAA, we have a free doctor consultation that's available. So, you can just directly go and book the session. Please feel free to copy the chat in there, that is copy the link and avail the doctor consultation in case of any sexual concerns or even like any dysfunctionalities or addiction or any of the mental and physical concerns that you might have regarding your sexual health and emotional health. Continuing with the questions, there was another one. Yeah, how does diabetes affect sexual wellness?
So diabetes can affect things like your so it can affect things like your erection, or even just generally maybe can affect the whole sexual desire or interest of a person, right? Because even with diabetes, there's a lot of fluctuation happening in the body, hormones and things like that. And I did mention, for someone to be able to function sexually a certain way, there are a lot of things involved: hormonal level, chemicals, mental state, a lot of things. So in that way it could, but definitely not on necessity, not necessarily.
Smoking affects sex?
Sorry?
Smoking.
It can, well, in the sense of your erection, ejaculation, it does, yes. Also just in your overall stamina, as they say, because of obviously the lungs and all of that. But it can, again, maybe not all the time with everybody, but it's just definitely not advised anyway. It's better to keep it at a very rare frequency.
We have some personal questions here. So, is abortion within 3 months legal? And please tell about the abortion pill, which can be taken after 72 hours or within the 1-2 months after the last dose. Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, well, it is, yes, but you will have to consult with a doctor when it comes to medication and when and how you should take it. But I think in general, the emergency pill is not something we'd advise to take frequently, right? I mean, the idea is don't have sexual intercourse knowing that I can take the pill anyway, because the I pill generally, it obviously has to mess around with a certain hormones, chemicals to avoid pregnancy. So it's not something we'd advise strongly. Better to keep it. It's an emergency pill, so keep it for an emergency, not something used commonly.
Does having multiple sexual partners can affect anything sexually?
Only maybe hygiene wise, infection wise, if you're not wearing a condom. Physically, that's the only concern. Maybe ensure you wear a condom and maintain a lot of hygiene. Very, very, very important. But otherwise, I think the only other way it could have an effect is maybe just emotionally, but then it's a very subjective thing. If the person's fine with it, then there's no problem.
Adult movies are very violent most of the times. What point of view everybody should have so that it will not impact the understanding of sexual satisfaction of a person?
What they show in movies?
Yeah, I mean, like porn in general, probably.
Right. So, see, as I said, right, I mean, I think we should be aware of the fact that the videos that you see on porn are very acted. There are actors, there's a script, they're told to do what, when, how much to express, how much to not. There are a lot of camera angles because they know what's going to appeal to you. They know what we're going to find very attractive and arousing. Right. And it takes hours. The actors take breaks. There are a lot of things that go behind shooting even a 3-minute video, like I mentioned. Right. So please be aware of that and understand that that's not how reality works. And, sexual intercourse with your actual partner is going to be very different. So porn should only be, as I said, for maybe some visual stimulation. It should never go beyond that goal, if I should say.
Got it. Is there a food suggested for married people who wants to improve sperm quality and wants to have a child?
I mean, there's no specific. I mean, in general, there are certain foods, which are, again, as I said, some chemicals and hormones and all that matter. So there's certain foods like, certain fruits, vegetables, which, we can maybe share over a list later or in consultation. But nothing specifically that will just increase a chance of pregnancy or, make things very significantly different. These things just maybe aid in sexual functioning, but it doesn't play a very direct primary role in that sense.
Which is better, IUD or pills?
Sorry?
IUD, intra-IUD devices.
Or?
And pills.
Well, again, I think each has its own, effects, but that's based on your health. It's based on your physical condition, and it's based on how long you want to abstain from maybe, pregnancy. So there are a lot of factors you have to take into consideration. But yeah, I think if you want it's always advisable to consult with a doctor, discuss this, and only then know what would be more suitable for you.
I think we are running out of time, and thank you so much for the time, Kanusha. I have dropped the link in the chat in case any of your questions is unanswered here in the chat, or if it is missed, there is a link that I'm attaching to where you can ask your question anonymously. Let me just drop it again. But again, in case it will be completely anonymous if you want to go ahead with. And thank you so much, Kanusha, for having with us and having the question, being patiently answering all these things. And also, thank you so much for the session. This was very informative, and I know a lot of people had a lot of questions regarding the same. It's not something that we see every day speaking about, but it was very insightful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And everyone have a great weekend and week. That is 2 days that's coming ahead. And see you again for the next session. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.